How to use the dash. The dashboard is composed of a number of different tools that provide data which allow you to emulate the physical demands of the ride. The first and most important tool on the dash is the effort meter. The effort meter provides a graphical representation of how hard you should be working during a specific part of the ride. In this video, we're ascending a small climb while trying to keep a good pace for other riders behind us. Watch how the effort increases as we continue to ascend. The effort meter is color-coded to help you quickly know what zone you should be training in, be it the weight loss zone, aerobic zone, anaerobic zone, or red zone. Each zone is based on a percentage of your maximum effort. Blue, which is below 70%, is your weight loss zone. Green, between 70 to 79% of max, is your aerobic zone. Yellow, between 80 to 89% of max, is your anaerobic zone. And red, from 90 to 100% of max, is your red zone. Be aware that the difficulty of each video is greatly dependent on the time spent in each zone. At the top of the effort meter is your heart rate goal displayed as a percentage of your max. Percent of max is calculated as your actual heart rate divided by your max. This value can be used to challenge yourself further by teaching your body how to precisely regulate efforts. Some heart rate monitors allow you to input your max heart rate and then automatically calculate your percentage of max. The gear ratio and resistance indicator provides you with two ways to determine what gear or what resistance you should be working at. The gear ratio is the best way to make changes in resistance if you're on your bike and trainer. With shifters, you can quickly make changes to gearing to simulate changes in pedaling effort. This animation provides an idea of how the gear ratio works. Notice how above the blue line, the numbers are ascending from 1 to 10. This corresponds to the gear that's in your rear cassette. Below the blue line are the two rings in the front, 42 being the small ring, 52 being the large. The resistance value is a tool to be used if you're on a spin bike. Most spinners are comfortable with a 1 to 10 scale used in classes. Basically, a 1 is a soft pedaling, easy spin resistance, whereas a 10 is a slow, leg-churning, difficult grind where you have to force the crank arms to turn. The cadence value allows you to identify what your pedaling cadence should be. While the cadence, resistance, and heart rate indicators attempt to synchronize, often it's difficult to match everything at the same time. Start out using either cadence or resistance while matching the effort goals. Much like the effort tool, the power tool provides a graphical representation of how much power the cyclist is producing during a given time. The power tool is a nice alternative or backup to the resistance and gear ratio tools. The power tool is a much more accurate way to identify sudden changes in power. At the top of this tool is a number that reflects a percentage of maximum power. What is maximum power, you might ask? This is a little bit more tricky. Unlike max heart rate, your max power is a minimum average over a given time interval. For example, suppose you're sprinting for the finish line. The competition is fierce, and you're out of the saddle hustling for all you're worth. You cross the finish 30 seconds after you begin your sprint and then rest. Now, suppose you're looking at the power profile for this effort. You might discover that the first 5 seconds you're generating about 800 watts. During the next 5 seconds, you're generating 750 watts. And then after that, 700 watts, and so on. As you get tired, your power slowly tapers off. Finding your max power over 30 seconds is simply an average power output over that 30-second interval. This is a much more accurate means of finding your max than trying to find an instantaneous max power output. Your percentage of max is calculated by dividing your current power output by your max. Most power computers can automatically generate the percentage of max value for you. The dashboard has 3 graphs. These are a really cool way to find out where you're located along the timeline of the ride. The graphs are divided by a bar, showing you where you're located along them. The top graph displays a hill profile. The middle graph displays the effort profile, and the bottom displays the power profile. Keeping your eyes on these are a great way to identify changes as they approach. The moving map provides some nice information about where you're cycling. Roads, topography, landmarks, rivers, lakes, and more can be identified so you don't feel lost on the ride. Also note, north is always up. I'm done. Have a great workout. You are listening to the default audio track. If you'd like to turn off the instructional narrative and listen to music, simply press the audio button on your DVD remote. Press the audio button one more time and listen to just the sounds of the ride. Everybody click in and just start a nice light pedal. Well, welcome to another fantastic ride. We're starting out central, well, not entirely central, but southern central part of Anchorage. It's a 7 p.m. start, and the sun's still in the sky when we get back, about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Just a magical place to ride. This was my second ride with the Arctic Bike Club. The first one was from Indian to Girdwood. Just a couple little hills at the beginning of this ride. This is our first one, so shift into a fairly high gear, and let's just kind of crank up this little hill here, get those legs warmed up. We can even get out of the saddle and pop up to the top of this. And that's it. Just enough to lift our heart rate to the aerobic zone. I'm riding right along with you. I'll help you try to cue some of the changes in effort. Try and add to the realism of the ride. But this is a training to climb ride, which means that we've got some
Nice little efforts coming up. We got a nice long warm-up till we get to the first climb. And then it gets pretty ugly. So we'll be talking a little bit about methods for training to be a good climber, or just ways to improve your climbing skills. For those who've watched other videos, you probably realize I'm the last person who should be talking about climbing. This is my weak area. I like to give myself a little leeway as a result of being a decent sprinter. When I started cycling back in the 80s, and I know I'm giving away my age here, I was 135 pounds, and I was almost impossible to keep up with on the hills. And that was my specialty. And there's a lot of teenagers out there now who can climb, and they just need to wait a few more years. A few years and a few beers will slow them down on the hills. I took about a 10-year break from cycling, and I started lifting weights. I added quite a bit of weight to my frame, gained almost 100 pounds, and after the wedding photos I realized that that wasn't a good weight to gain. Sorry about the breath noises here. Let me adjust my mic. So I was shooting for higher weights and going for muscular poundage. And after my first son was born, decided that I should pick up cycling again. And I was trailing him around Reno, Nevada, in a bike trailer. And after about 6 months of that, I figured I was in shape to go ride with the group, and I had my butt handed to me, especially on the hills. I was carrying around over 200 pounds still, and I was slowly but surely losing the weight. And today I'm still on the heavier side compared to elite climbers at 165 pounds. So I bring all this up because not all of us are going to be good climbers, but we want to try to train for it nonetheless. And there's a certain prestige that goes with being a good climber. The winners of the big races, they're all good climbers. Lance Armstrong, and others. And you watch Andy climbing up the Pyrenees, or along the Tour de France, or Levi Leipheimer in California, kicking butt, taking no names, winning the races because he can climb those crazy grades that they throw at you in California. Got a little hill here, not much. And so when you're out there, whether you're riding a century ride or a club ride, or just encountering people on the road, it's kind of nice to be able to climb past them, not feel like you're out of shape, even though on the flats you might be able to make quick work of them. So we're slowly approaching the southernmost part of Anchorage. We'll teleport here pretty soon, where we're picking up some other people. And I just cut out the footage. Still in residential Anchorage. Again, we're keeping it easy. If you're on a spin bike and you're looking at the constant changes in resistance, you can temper that. It's all pretty mellow here until we get to the climbs, and then you can just start adding higher resistances. These little lumps in the road don't contribute a whole lot to the workout, but just give us a nice warm-up. The one on the bottom right is our resistance, and it's just a really easy cadence. Also, if you're on a spin bike, it's really hard to stop pedaling. So if you're on a spinner, no need to stop pedaling, just soft pedal. If you're on a trainer, you can follow those resistances or those changes in gear ratio real easy, and it just kind of helps suck you into the ride a little bit more. You notice on the bottom you'll see two graphs. The upper one is the hill profile. You can see where that mountain is compared to where we're at. So about halfway there. Below the hill profile is our effort profile. And you'll notice that there's a bunch of little red spots. And those are high efforts at about 90 to 95% of our max. And in between those high efforts are gaps. And those were rest areas where we waited for the group to catch up. We won't have that luxury on the trainer. We're just going to keep rolling. It's going to be one big fat red spot on that effort profile. The physics behind climbing is kind of interesting. Basically, climbing is a directly or your ability to climb, or your efficiency at it, is is proportional to your power to rate ratio. And basically power is just a value that's work divided by time, or how much work we can do. Or let me back up. Work is the amount of energy required to move a weight, opposite to the force of gravity, during a specific or given time. So the more weight we lift over a shorter period of time will determine a higher power rating. And or a higher work rating, I'm sorry. And then power is defined by the work divided by time. So the more work we do in a shorter period of time, the higher output we're doing. So basically, if we're lifting a lot of weight and the time is short, we're generating a lot of power. Just to give you an idea, 1 horsepower is equal to 760 watts per second. So our power is typically expressed in terms of wattage. That's my engineering geekitude surfacing. Apologize. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that if you're going to climb, it's going to require more power to climb faster, or it's going to require more power to carry a mass up the hill. And what we want to try to do is minimize the power requirements in order to do that. Because all that power comes from your legs, from your heart. And the more we put on the table, the less we're going to carry with us. Power is like a bag of marbles. You only got so many marbles, and every time you have to drive up your power, you're dropping a handful of marbles. And so we've got to try to conserve them to sustain us through the end of the ride. That's a really bad analogy, but it's the best one I got. So the good climbers you see on the tour all look pretty emaciated, really skinny, some skinnier than others. And then basically there's a little rule of thumb if you look at the averages, the weight to height ratio. They carry about 2 pounds for every 1 inch in height. And that's your elite climber status. And not only are these guys lightweight, but they're conditioned, they're strong, and they can fly up the hills. So if they follow this guideline, this formula, because they want to win races. So if you want to win a race to the top of a climb, you have to lose weight. Got a little tiny hill here. Add some resistance and come up to the top. Get the heart rate up. And back down. It's kind of a slow, soft pedal here. Water bottle that pops up. It's a reminder to take a drink. Sometimes it's hard to remember to take a drink, especially when you're working hard. And it's critical, especially during a climbing workout, to keep yourself hydrated and also nourished. I like to take a drink about once every 10 minutes when I'm in a fairly relaxed mode. And when I start going a little harder and I'm sweating, about once every 5 minutes. So a good hill climber is looking to get up a hill as fast as possible. And so the variable is time that they want to be able to control. Power is not their key requirement. They don't really care about how much power they produce. As a matter of fact, they want to try to conserve that as much as power as possible. And there's a lot of strategies in order to conserve power. And the first and most obvious is the weight, or your power to weight ratio. So keeping your weight down is a great way to minimize the amount of power that you need to generate in order to get up a hill. And then another method, or another way to conserve on power is to use proper technique. And then also to pace or regulate your effort throughout the entire climb. And to maximize efforts where you can, where the conditions favor your, whether body type, whether your abilities. We'll talk a little bit about technique. We'll talk a little bit about all of that. Weight, technique, regulating efforts, and maximizing your efforts when the conditions favor you. And even on this ride, you'll see that. You'll see the better climbers, what they do compared to what I do. And the best climber, if you ask me, is actually the ride leader. We'll follow her up the hill. Her technique is almost flawless. And maybe I'll be able to point out a few mistakes along the way, what I wouldn't do. So some of the things we should focus on before we actually get to those hills in technique, which is coming up pretty quick, so I'm going to just run down the list here. We want to use our larger muscles for the bulk of the climb, and those are our leg and glutes. So we want to try to train ourselves in the saddle. You're a more efficient climber when you're in the saddle and not out of it. But we will do a little out of the saddle work because we need to see how that feels and how that changes the dynamics of the ride. If you're actually trying to climb a hill as fast as you can, higher cadences are better cadences of around 80 to 90 RPM. That's where most climbers try to sustain. So they'll use a gear ratio that they can maintain that cadence, but for the purposes of training, we want to train those powerful muscles. We're going to use lower cadences for that, of around 50 to 70 RPM. It's going to make our legs work a little harder, make us a little sore. It's going to break down the muscle. It's not a racing technique, it's a training technique. For the most part, while you're climbing, you're not in the drops. You're on the hoods or out of the saddle. You should find a comfortable hand position that opens your chest up so that you can breathe easily. The wider your arms, the bigger your chest cavity, and the more airflow you can get in, which improves our efficiency. Really soon here, we're going to actually get into the drops, and just having a little fun, we're going to fly down the hill, race and catch the group up front. We're going to lift our efforts into the red. We're going to drive up our cadence, and it's going to be really tough to talk through, so I'll be working that with you. And we'll continue our climbing discussion when we get to the easy section, when we get up to the top of the hills. So let's just get ready to kind of dig in here. We're going to add a lot of resistance. We're going to really drive up our cadence and get that heart rate scooting. Let's get into our drops here, start adding some resistance, and pick up the cadence. RPM. Get those legs cooking. Spin those legs around. Push, pull. Little hill. You can see him right up front. Not going to catch him. It's a hill right in front of us. It starts out real steep, so we'll be getting out of the saddle. Put on that resistance.